I have a 15-year-old daughter. If she was telling me what to do in the midst of me being like doing my job, I'd be like, excuse me, I've been doing this for 20 years. Like Claire would just, why would she not like be a little bit more irritated and just sit, not irritated, it's not the right word, but more confident in who she is, to not be like time, history, the damned, but just say like, I've been here a while, bitch. Like, I know about whether or not you can change the future. We tried that shit and it didn't work. You just not worry your pretty little head about it. You've been here for half an hour. You know what I mean? Like, there's just like something's wrong and I can't figure out. I think it's the way that they write the show, obviously.
Right. Or even have Brianna say that to her, like, hey, Mom, you've tried changing the past and the back then. You tried changing the future back then with Culloden. You've told me these stories. Do you think you should be trying to look for penicillin when it hasn't been? My favorite was when Claire actually'd her. She's like 100 years from now. And her mom was like, and she was like, no, it's 154 years from now. Like, but you don't know.
Penicillin, I mean, it already existed. It's a thing, right. You know, it's just like, also, I would have been like, as a daughter, like, ooh, cool. Because we could really use some of this. Like, this is not the thing that's going to get you canceled on the ridge, penicillin.
No, what's going to get you killed is going to be you splitting open a body. And essentially saying to, like, look what I'm doing. I'm doing an autopsy, you know.
Or do you think she found rib spreaders?
For real. It just looked like leather that she had put together. But some people are saying that YouTube just started. If it did, I'm really sorry. You didn't miss a whole lot other than our intro and talking about how we got into Claire being capable. But sorry if that messed up for some reason. At least you're here now. But yeah, I just am fully aware that Brie needs to sometimes slow down. But I also think that either the writers or the actresses themselves or the directors don't really get a mother-daughter relationship sometimes.
Right.
And they need to, it's not just, you know, a son, you don't talk to each other that way all the time. Like, there's a shorthand with family that you never see them use. And I don't necessarily think she would use it with Jamie at this particular juncture, but like with Claire, they've got to have a shorthand and they never do. And it drives me insane as a mom. I'd be like, bitch, shut up. I'm about to do something you ain't ever done. You know, it's just so weird to me. Maybe I'm a terrible parent.
No, because my mom is the same way. Like, it would be like, if I questioned my mom, it would just be Julie. Like that would be it. Julie.
That's it. You don't need a whole like thing. Yeah, it's dumb. Courtney just said, why would Brie as a mother want Claire to make penicillin? Like, why would she not want her to make penicillin? Like, in my mind, she has a baby that's
she corrected herself.
Why wouldn't?
Like, she has a baby that's not vaccinated. Like, in a time when smallpox is a thing, like, yes, whatever you can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird that Brie's like that.
Going back to what you were saying in regards to, like, is it Katrina? Is it this? I think it's just a combination of all three, because at some point a writer writes it, a director directs it, and an actor acts it. And so somebody along the way said, this is how it should be played. This is it. And she did it. And they said, that's great. So I think it's all three, a combination.
Yeah. Heidi just said, make penicillin, but like, for the love of God, why is she putting it under all that glass? And where'd she get all that glass? And how did she make all that bread? Where's all this glass coming from?
Right. They all looked pretty fresh, right? Yeah.
It was all fresh bread.
And said she made it overnight. That's impossible.
It was beautiful looking bread. I wanted to go buy some in some like hipster bakery in Brooklyn. Plus their candle making, which, you know, that excited me too. But it was so much bread. And the woman's like, this is a waste. I'm like, it is a waste.
It would not be physically possible for her to even knead that much dough in one night. Her forearms would be on fire. I don't care that she just spread open the ribs of a 50-year-old dude. Her forearms would be in so much. It's just not physical. This is what kills me about the show. It's perfectly fine for Claire to make penicillin and make bread and have this little culture growth thing that she's doing. It is not at all believable that she made all that bread overnight and has all of these blown glass hurricanes all over her. Why can't they make it believable? Why is it so huge every time? Those tallow candles that they're making and hanging up in a tree with all that Spanish moss on it, guess what they're going to have all over them? dead bugs, lots of little pieces of grass and pieces of moss, and all of it's those tallow candles are not going to be perfectly yellow and smooth and easy. They all looked like they were put up for a wedding. They're going to be nasty by the time they're done with it. Why are they putting it on that huge tree? That doesn't make any sense.
And they have
that drives me crazy.
They have the Pottery Barn candle maker holder. It's like everything is just kind of a little too extravagant. The homespun is missing. When she first tried to make penicillin in the book, it was just, like a little bit of bread that was hidden, and then, oh my gosh, one person messed the one thing up and it was just disaster.
Yeah, and she had, like an old like gourd or something that had some mold on it. Like she was doing like gross, nasty shit, and this was like perfectly new bread. She should have gotten the old bread. It probably already had some mold on it. So dumb.
That's what I was like kind of confused. I'm like, there's something in that house that has mold on it. Not everything is fresh in that house. Instead, it looked like the morning of Panera. Like when they first open up, and the smell.
Bread bowls.
Right. There was, I was like, how big is their oven? Because bread takes time. First of all, you have to let it rise.
It's physically impossible. It's not possible.
There's no way.
The chemistry is off. It doesn't work.
And did anyone else get any Harry Potter vibes when they showed the shot with all the candles hanging up on the tree? At first I thought they were floating. And I was like, oh, it's like the Great Hall in Harry Potter at nighttime with all the candles floating. It was beautiful.
And my wedding had all of these like black wrought iron Gothic windows, and they were just wrought iron. And we had these big candles on them. And I didn't realize that the darkness of the stage behind it, you don't see anything in our pictures but floating candles. But there were these huge Gothic windows. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But like, yes, it had Harry Potter vibes. I'm drinking a little product placement mug from a show that's coming back soon. I didn't mean to do that, but I am. But yeah, all that's ridiculous. But that to say, we all love the scene with Claire and Marsley. It works super, super well. Thanks to Lauren Lyle being just a breath of fresh air. She's so good in this show. I'm so glad they gave her more to do.
Right.
Someone on Twitter likened her reaction to the kombucha lady, where she's just like, well,
right.
I love the kombucha lady. But it's a Vanessa just said it's a good book change. It is a good book change. It's one of those things that you never know where they're going to go with it, though. I mean, let's discuss the fact that in the books, and I haven't read this far, but I know it because you guys are nothing but spoiler central, that Malva Christie or Malva, I don't know how you say that.
It's the opposite of Malva, because that's how I say it. And every name that I think Outlander is always wrong.
Well, me too.
Right.
I even say Outlander wrong. But Malva Christie becomes Claire's apprentice. And then apparently she has this horrible storyline where she like accuses Jamie of rape or something like that. And becomes kind of like the villain of one of the next books. And so everyone's like, oh, well, there's a couple of options, right? Marsley's taking her place as the apprentice, so maybe they won't do Malva's storyline at all, which is not what they're going to do. They're going to go for high drama. I mean, eventually there'll be somebody that takes the place of Malva Christie. If Malva Christie's not going to be Claire's apprentice, she will show up. In fact, I mean, they're already in the Fiery Cross. We just barely see them. They're in that book. They just come in for a minute towards the end. But the other thing that I actually think might be happening, which will be even worse, is if they give Malva's whole storyline to Marsley. Anybody think that might happen?
What do you mean?
I mean the accusation.
I hope not. I think that would be a bad. Yeah.
Malva. She accuses Jamie because she's pregnant with her brother's baby because her brother is raping her.
Right.
Well, I didn't know all of that.
Well, there you go.
I didn't know either. I just no. I hope they don't do that because she off the bat, I think one of the cutest couples on this show, even more so than, sorry, I don't mean to be negative, more so than right now, Roger and Bree.
That's not negative. That's
not negative. Yeah, that's just life. That's just how it works.
Is Marcelly and oh my God, how can I forget his name? Fergus. Thank you. And so I hope they don't do that because Fergus is Jamie's. That just adds to the melodrama. So if we want to talk about melodrama, that's melodramatic for me. Like that's some Days of Our Lives bullshit.
Right.
And I don't want to see that.
Heidi just said, I really, really think they're bringing Leary back. I don't disagree. I think they're going to bring Leary back too. And if you think back to some of the character assassination they've done with Leary, some stuff that we're going to talk about with Myrta that's coming up, and just different ways that they haven't been consistent with what we know of the characters and the reasons things get done. I don't think it's beyond them to do this with Marcelly. I really don't.
No.
I mean, they could figure out a way to make it happen. We had an entire episode where Brianna is in Leary's house bonding with Joni. I mean, they do some batshit crazy shit. So
they do. I just hope that's not one of them, because I think that would put such a damper on the relationship between Jamie and Fergus.
And I'll say this. I know for a fact they probably haven't thought that far in advance. They just wanted to give Lauren Lyle more to do. And for that, I applaud them. She needed much more to do.
She was great. She was great in this episode. I feel like she was all of us when she walks in and she sees the human carcass on the table. And she's like, oh my God.
So well done. Super well done. To the point where you're not even...
Not overacted.
You're not even sure that what she's saying behind Claire's mouth, you know, and it just bursts out.
In fact, it would have been funny if that was like a good acting technique would have been like, don't show me. I just want to see what my natural reaction is. And it felt like a natural reaction when you walk in and you're like, well, there's a human body torn open. Yeah. That's great. But hey, at least his face is covered.
But this probably means that we won't get one of my favorite scenes in this book, which is the autopsy at
River
Run.
Yeah, that's
we're definitely not.
Yeah,
no, because now you can't do unless they make it where she's caught and there's a in sense of now it's the witch thing. Now it's the but
no, they're not doing it. They mentioned at the end of the little after show or whatever that they weren't going to be able to do the autopsy where it shows up in the book, and so they did it here instead.
Then never mind.
Yeah. I don't mind not getting the River Run autopsy. Alicia just said the same thing. Because for me, I don't know if this is how you feel about it, Alicia, but for me, it's another instance of Claire not being clear about how she feels about enslaved people and letting kind of her zeal for medical knowledge or for, being like the bones doctor or whatever that's going to go out and figure out, CSI at all or whatever. Right. I find it to be she's very insensitive in that way, just in her zeal to get the answers that she wants. And that if you recall in the book, the way Phaedra reacts to the fact that it's her mother that was killed and they've had this bond with Phaedra, and then for her to be so callous about what she chooses to do with that body without permission, and I don't like it. So I'm glad that we're not doing that.
Talking about emotions and everything, with Marcelly, we have to give credit, and Beth, you gave credit to at the very beginning, the woman who's the husband's dying on the table. You hear his death rattle. Yeah. You actually hear it. And she's just bawling her eye. She's crying. That was a great scene in regards to the actress who acted it. I thought she did a great job. It was just that
she did do a good job. Yeah. That was a good scene.
Right. And it wasn't malicious. She thought she was helping. And that's what spurs Claire on. She thought she was helping her husband. She gave him mercury pill. She she let out his blood. Yeah. And that's what essentially made Claire move forward with everything.
And I thought actually what kind of, and I said this in my recap, but what pricked my sinuses in that scene was Brianna's reaction. I thought, obviously the wife sobbing over her husband, kind of kept the tears coming, but Brianna's original, just oh shit, this dude's dying. I just oh no. So that's basically 2 episodes in a row where Sophie Skelton has not screwed the pooch. No. So I've been
she looks very luminous. Surprised. She's very luminous in this episode. No makeup, her freckles are coming through. She just
when she was holding the musket and everything, she looked really powerful in this. Good. It was and when she hit the turkey, which we can argue whether that's a real turkey.
We're not doing that. No? Why would we do that? Because it's obviously not. But let's talk about Bree and Roger. If we're going to talk about Bree again, I said this in my recap. I'm trying really hard with Roger. I loved his scene with Claire. I love when he is with Claire. I actually kind of wish that we got scenes with them where she's discussing their plan and they hide the body and they, or whatever. I wish we had actually gotten a little bit of that. I think that his scenes with Claire are really easy. I think their mutual affection and respect for one another kind of comes through really easily. But when you see him on screen with Brianna, there's just this underlying tension of he is fully thinking about himself. He's so selfish. And he's out there trying to learn how to shoot, and he's not in any way telling her, "Man, you're so good at this. This is wonderful. Like, what can I do to help you do this faster? Why don't I just stay home and watch Jim so you can get this done?" Like, or is there a better way for me to learn how to shoot? Just show me. Everything he's doing is he's just whining his way through it. She's frustrated. And then when she's like literally trying to prop up his arm and show him how to shoot, he just gets a hard on and it's not sexy. Like she's so irritated with him. This isn't cute. It just makes me crazy.
I was especially bothered about the change in the book where Claire just basically says, "Oh, you're just kind of short-sighted or nearsighted," and didn't come up with the whole "you're never going to be able to shoot" thing. Because I thought, at least if he thought, well, there's nothing I can do about it, it would help let him ease up a little bit,
Exactly.
Chill the fuck out, Roger.
Right. My issue with that scene in the woods too, when they're shooting, is they go into the conversation of, "You want to go back, Dean?" He's like, "Yeah." And I felt like, I get it. He was frustrated, but I felt like I want to go back because for me, it came off, well, I can't shoot. I can't defend you. I can't be a man out here. I want to go back to a place where I can be a man. And I was like, I didn't really care for that in regards to, I get, and the fact is, I loved what she said. She said, "My family's here." And I think that's going to be, we said it last week, it's going to be the underlying tension between them throughout this whole season. It's, I want to go back. I don't want to go back. My family's here. And he says, "Well, you're my family."
I really don't see how they can have any more conversations at this point about this.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't think they were going to talk about it this soon. I thought something else would happen or more would kind of come up and I was like, okay, we've had that out. Like her family's here. What else are you going to say? And Claire was like, whatever, you got to make sure Jim can go back. What else is there to talk about?
and that was Claire's thing. Claire was thinking about Jim. Claire was saying, like, you guys have to go back because of Jim. If Jim scrapes his knee, you just give him an antibiotic and he's fine. Jem scrapes his knee here, he could lose his leg. He could die. Faith puts that she thinks, I think Roger feels more in control and comfortable in the 1960s. And I think that's it. I think Roger feels like he is a man, whatever that is, in the 1960s compared to what he is now. And that whole thing with like, your dad doesn't like me. He's my colonel. He's not my father.
Yeah, where the fuck did that come from?
You don't
have any respect for Jamie Fraser beyond the fact that he just named you a captain? Are you fucking kidding me?
Or
like,
the fact
then again, if you think about it, we are 2 episodes from the fight in the woods where Jamie was like, "Man up and go be with her or get the fuck out." You know what I mean? And so we're only who knows where we are in the timeline past that information.
Right.
But in Outlander time, we're only 2 episodes past that. So it makes sense for him not to trust Jamie yet. But again, bad writing to have gotten us this far and not shown the way that they would have had to grow together. And there's just when he's talking to Claire, he's not concerned about Jim. He's not concerned about Brianna. He mentions his dad, forget his mom. I guess it doesn't matter, whatever her eyes were doing. But like, he mentions his dad, and immediately they're brought back to the future, and she's like, "Yeah, you should probably go back if you can." And he's like, "Yeah, I really super want to, but that pesky baby's in the way."
Right. Even when he saw the pictures that she was drawing on all that fine paper she seems to have access to.
Yeah.
It seemed, and maybe it was just the way that it was shot, but it was kind of like, how is this affecting Roger?
Yep,
exactly.
Yeah,
and not thinking about how it's affecting her. And, having that, like, okay, what's going on here that I can talk to her about or hold her or hug her? And that's the thing. He doesn't even approach her when they don't show it. doesn't even approach her after seeing these images, and they are so like they're obviously, anybody with Psych 101 class would be like, we can analyze those pictures for you.
Oh yeah, she's in trauma for sure. But yes, exactly. It's absolutely filmed like Roger's going to lose it because it is about him. And having been in abusive relationships, I'm worried for Brianna that he's going to go out and be like, what the fuck is this? You know, like, why are you drawing?
Why are you thinking about him?
Yeah.
Where's my picture?
If you think about like the dream journal thing, and I guess we're not getting that. I think that the photos, obviously on television, photos work better than a dream journal would. And that's fine, the visual medium. But the fact that the dream journals were flat out like, I had a sex dream and it wasn't Roger, you know, and that kind of thing, like had that stuff in it. Show Roger, if he had the dream journal and was actually seeing her thoughts that were going through her head about Stephen Bonnet or about their sex life or whatever.
Right.
I'd be terrified of him. That's he has all the hallmarks of an abusive partner. And when he looked at those papers, my first thought was not poor Roger. His heart is broken for his wife and his, you know, and her trauma. It was Bree needs to get out of that yard and go see her mom, because he's going to come out and either say something shitty or do something shitty that's going to make her trauma worse.
Well, and that's the shortcoming, I think. No offense to the show, they could have just remedied that, had him walk out and put his arm around her, and when she's like, what, you know, oh, why are you hugging me?
Do what Jamie would do.
Right, just
go to her.
Just hold her. You don't have to say anything. Just hold her to show her, I get it. We don't have to talk about it right now, but I get it. Other than that, they let it go, and it's like, okay. But this whole thing was just more so Roger than anything. It was I want to go back for me. I want to go back. I'm looking at these pictures. I'm not, and who knows? The writers could tell us, no, he was thinking about her. But we're not. You have to show it sometimes. Yeah, you have to show it.
Alicia just brought up how Book Roger has a moment like that where he does the whole throwing her on the bed thing and holding her down, and then he compares it to Stephen Bonnet and whether that's why she responded. Absolutely, we talked about this when we did our reread. It's the shittiest thing he does in that particular book, and he's just not a good partner, and doesn't show any concern for her, and it's super getting old. Plus the fact, Marita just brought this up, that Brianna's being used as a mouthpiece for the writers, telling Rogers and us that he's such a good dad. Again, I said the same thing in my recap. Like, thanks for reminding us. Like, we wouldn't have known otherwise if Brianna hadn't said it, because we wouldn't have known otherwise. We have 0% seen him with Jem. And it just because he's not down on the ground with him. He's just sitting in a chair watching him because he's been made to or whatever. I mean, it's not that great of a dad yet.
Jeremiah singing Joy to the World. Jeremiah had a bullfrog.
And his voice is not even that good, y'all. That's what drives me crazy.
I was like, why is he not on at least playing the guitar on the ground?
Yeah.
With the baby. Like, he could have been doing that and having Jem like strum the guitar or something like that.
And speaking of this little bit, thank you, Lachey. Never mind that Rick has no idea about his character's motivation.
No.
Somebody asked him specifically, like, does Roger, is he unhappy in the 18th century? And then they went on and said some other stuff in the tweet. And his response was, totally.
Yeah.
And I responded like, really? Roger hates the 18th century? He does? Because in the book, that isn't there at all. And why would show Roger just flat out hate it? That doesn't make any sense. But at the same time, what are we even seeing with show Roger? I don't even know what it is I'm supposed to.
Well, it's part of that it's part of the melodrama. It's part of that sense of the tension. They have to add that tension in. It's Roger wanting to go back. Once again, not understanding why she would like to stay. Yes, it is a dangerous time for Jem. He can scrape his knee, but his grandmother can come up with something. She has enough bread for it. But the fact is, he doesn't think about her. He doesn't think about what's right. Bree's family is here. Yes, and when he's like, well, you're my family. Cool. You're my family too, but so are they.
Kendra just said he also totally rapes her later, but of course it's not rape. I don't know what that is.
Is that the holding down?
I don't remember that.
I don't know. I don't know what that is.
Kendra, can you please answer that?
Try to explain. Alyssa just said also the fact that Sophie Skelton doesn't ship Roger. It's very like 100%. Nobody wants more shade given to Roger than Sophie Skelton. It cracks me up. But yeah,
well, also they did the research with the the crazy lady. They found all of her books about going time travel and all the rules and how you might not be at the right place. And they know that some people haven't ended up in the right time or the right place. And it's just so much uncertainty that to me, it would just be completely off the table.
Yeah, it would absolutely. Right. I mean, it should be off the table. And the thing is, it kind of is in the books.
Yeah, until
they have to go back.
They have to go back.
Yeah, right. Like there's really no question of this. Why is this the thing that the writers hooked onto as being the major tension? No. I mean, there's the tension of him not knowing what's going on,
right?
But the tension of whether or not he wants to go back and she doesn't just because of the family. He doesn't have any family. He doesn't have anybody to go back to. Neither does she. No, it's really dumb.
It's just running water and a air conditioning. D on Twitter says, I do find there is too much stuff happening off screen, especially with Bree and Roger. And I agree. I think we need to see more.
Well, with Myrta and all of that.
If they want us to love him, they need to show more. They need to show more with Jem. They need to show more empathy.
How about this? How about we don't see him sing again, and instead we see him being a good father and a husband?
Change Jem's diaper.
I mean, the bare minimum, maybe. But let's get off of Roger and Bree because, poor Bree can't get off, but at least we can get off of them. Yeah. And let's discuss Myrta in this episode. The cold open starts out with the regulators pulling men who look just like them out of a building we've never seen before, and tar and feather them, which is way more torturous than like my imagination as a Revolutionary War student in the 6th grade would have allowed me to believe. But like, that's terrorism and torture and some really bad shit. And yet at the very end of the cold open, we get the little villain shot and it's Myrta's face. And I found this incredibly graphic and disgusting. And when you said you didn't look down at your phone, Amy, I was like, not even during the tar and feathering, because I did.
I love the gore.
I don't mind gore either.
No,
I don't mind gore either if it has if I'm expecting it, which I wasn't expecting it. But if it's coming from characters I expect it from, then it makes more sense. This felt very strange. I mean, you couldn't tell the difference between the men who were doing the tarring and the men who were being tarred. You couldn't figure out there's no story there. It's just terrorism. It's just crazy torture time. And there's no story about why they're doing what they're doing. And there's no way to tell who the bad guys are, except the bad guys are the ones doing the torturing. And so then that stands to reason that it's Myrta and the regulators, which is not the story that they're trying to tell. They're not trying to tell a story that they're doing the wrong thing or that they aren't the ones that we're supposed to sympathize with.
I found it to be really ironic that the story opened with gratuitous violence and ended with gratuitous violence. And it was Myrta, even though it was essentially at the direction of Myrta, and it was Stephen Bonnet. And for me, it was, what's the difference between these two men?
Yeah, as the last line in my recap was they both left men maimed in this episode.
Exactly. So I did not like it. I'm not cheering for Myrta at this point. There's a part of me that was like, catch him, like.
And the writers aren't deep enough to be trying to teach, Americans some lesson about, this is what the revolution really was about. No. They were kind of like wingnuts and, didn't want to pay their taxes. And the writers aren't that deep. It's just, they're just lazy.
Yeah.
Right.
And the thing is that there is a story in the Fiery Cross that they could have explored with, and I can't remember his name, I'm not going to, but the guy who loses his wife to the tax collectors.
Oh yeah.
And ends up incredibly depressed and just, has nothing. And essentially it was just his wife trying to get his children some shelter or whatever that killed them. And while he had gone off to pay the taxes that they couldn't afford. And Jamie, when they meet him at the gathering and see what's really going on, there is sympathy for their plight. There's Herman husband who's meant to be a Quaker and meant to be, nonviolent. And why they're doing what they're doing has a just and noble cause. And it's also headed up by a man who doesn't want to see them doing all of this stuff. And yet we're not seeing any of that. None of that is explained. None of that is pulled into the story. And it is dumb.
It doesn't help that Jamie is like Michael Bloomberg of the Ridge. He's a 1%er who is, the whole, they haven't shown me any true poverty.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Why is they're always talking about, oh, you got all this money, you got all this land. Even the lieutenant from the redcoat lieutenant is like, I sure wish I could be you. Like, he's super affluent. Who are these people? That's not who they are.
No. My issue too is the light it paints Jamie in. So by painting Murtaugh in this almost sinister, villainous light, you have Jamie who is, begging him, don't let me find you. Don't let me find you. And Jamie who's doing everything to kind of thwart the chase and the hunt for him. Now I'm like, why? Look what he's doing. I mean, so for me, it doesn't help. It doesn't paint Jamie in a good light in that sense. I love what Jamie was doing.
What's they really pulled between? Really pulled between?
Exactly. And that for me was very, but can we talk really quick about everyone's asking about why does husband look like a pirate? I swear to God, yesterday I was like, oh my God, he looks like an extra from Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yes, exactly. Oh, sorry. That was really exact. I said the exact same thing.
I was like, oh, he cosplays.
I mean, you can't tell he's supposed to be a Quaker at all. I actually thought Quakers had no beards.
I thought
I might be wrong about that.
In the book, because they say thee thou, like thee thou.
Right, thy, whatever.
He looked like he was an extra. He's an animatronic extra at the Pirates of the Caribbean ride in Disneyland.
I always look at the end of that ride to make sure that the animatronic Jack Sparrow is not really Johnny Depp. I'm always like, fingers crossed, it could be him today. It's never going to be him.
Well, it was this guy that it was husband last night in the episode. So
yeah. But again, never mind. But yeah, there's no, the idea that they brought Murda back to be some kind of balm to Jamie's soul, to be some sort of, rally point around his time in Scotland that follows him to the Americas. And then for that rally point, for that, where he stuck a pin in his old life, it got to bring some of it back with him. He's lost Ian, Fergus is farther blown in terms of who he is, but Murtaugh is his whole past. Mm-hmm. And to bring his whole past with him, to be at home with him, where he's going to have his new home and to be a father figure to him, and then to blow it up by assassinating his character in a very unnecessary way and just kind of a lazy way, really pisses me off. And I actually feel like it's something that Diana has got to hate. I mean, maybe it's only the second episode. Maybe they're taking it some direction that we cannot see. I don't have faith that that's what they're doing because it so rarely ever happens. But it doesn't matter because in this episode, he unfairly tortured people.
Right.
And so it doesn't matter where it's going. This episode assassinated Murtaugh's character. And why bring him back just to do that?
So Heidi just put that Diana threw shade about this episode on Facebook.
This has to be the reason why.
She threw episode of the 92Y thing too, kind of about like, is this going to be the end of Murtaugh? And she made some comment like, it should have been like 3 seasons ago.
Yeah, she's said that before. I mean, she said several times, when I kill a character, they stay dead. And Vanessa just said, Diana said that 502 wasn't the highlight of the season. And that I really think this is probably the reason why. I think the rest of it, Claire and Marsley and Brianna and even Jamie's character, the some of what Jamie is going through, that's all fine. Murtaugh, absolutely unfine. And even, I'm going to throw this out now. We talked about how Jamie is great in this episode, and I think that he is. I think that Sam's doing a good job. Yeah. But in general, what's going on with Jamie doesn't make sense.
No.
The fact that they're calling it Between Two Fires, and I was cracking up listening to Meryl and whatever his name is, Matthew, talk about this episode and bring about like the title and how he's, torn between two things. And then, Claire's torn between helping save people and living in the 18th century. And Marsley's torn between her love for her mother and her stepmother, Claire. And I was like, everybody in the fucking world, every human is torn between two things at some point in time. You know what I mean? Like, Between Two Fires is the most banal, dumb theme I have ever heard in my entire life. And to say that it's like this high and mighty thematic thing that they threw out there for Jamie, I'm like, I'm sorry. Is he Abraham walking through the, halved carcass with the bowl of smoke? And who gives a shit about this horribly just junior college theme paper that you wrote that sounds like something that I put together when I was 12 that I thought was so erudite and smart, and it was so stupid, and it doesn't even make sense for Jamie to be even remotely confused, because if he knows what happened, he looked at that man with scars all over his chest and he's like, in time you're going to wear them well because it was the right cause. So stupid. It is incredibly stupid.
I hated that
Jamie
part.
would not be confused.
No. And also Murta being one of the fires, I feel like this is very against, besides him being a torturer, Jamie said one thing to him, and you have one job, be hard to find.
Yeah, that's it.
That's one thing he asked of him, and he's almost kind of flaunting it, that he isn't hard to find. And
scarring people. This is a man who has visible scars on his back from abuse. And there he is staring at the actual crime right in front of him. He even hears about there's a man in the other room who cannot walk. We don't think he's going to make it.
That man is not going to make it. They poured boiling tar on his head.
And that's my issue, is by keeping Murtaugh and making him this person, they've essentially also affected Jamie and how we feel about Jamie. This is not.
They do it all the time. They ruin him by doing dumb things that don't make sense for his character.
No. And there is no between two. There is somebody should put the title of the episode Marita should be Between Two Bad Writers. And
that's the name of my favorite MFM romance novel, when you got a ginger on one side and a ginger on the other.
Right. And don't get us wrong, we still liked parts of this episode. There were still good parts of this episode, but this Murtaugh thing, it went to a bad direction. Be hard to find. He's not being hard to find.
No, he's like, here I am, bitch. And also, it's just incredibly lazy. It doesn't provide the stakes that they think that it does. Yes, Jamie is torn, but also Jamie is honorable, and he would be honorable before he would be torn. And so when he looks at Knox and says, you killed a man without trial, that's Jamie. Right. That's how he would react. Mm-hmm. But Jamie would have stopped him earlier as soon as he pulled his sword out. You know what I mean? Like, there's that, and it's the same thing. Jamie sees what Murtaugh and the regulators are doing, and he would be stopping it at its source any way he could. He wouldn't just be letting the guys out of jail. He would be going with them, finding Murtaugh and be like, what the fuck is going on? This ends right now. You guys have got, whatever. His honor would preclude him from being able to just kind of mealy mouth his way through whatever it is that's going on.
Right. Instead of breaking those two guys out, he would have spent more time going and he would have found them. He's Jamie. He would have found Murtaugh and told him, I told you to be hard to find. You're not hard to find. Get out. Stop paying people.
He did a lot of good eyeball acting this episode. Like
so much eyebrow acting too. I was like, I thought you got Botox, but he was like, what? And I was like, might be wearing off.
Morse code.
He was doing a lot of that telepathy, which is actually, I don't mind. I like in my mind, Jamie Fraser does a lot of that anyway. So I'm fully okay with that. But
he does a lot of what? Botox?
Yeah. No. But a lot of Claire also acting, a lot of you want to say, man? He's very in their face about
other than penicillin. Claire also found with the bread Botox.
Yeah, wouldn't be bad. Let's talk about Lieutenant Knox just a little bit. I don't care about anything that they talked about. They talked so much. And I think they were doing quite a bit of flirting. I think it was very.
I thought they were in love.
The whole conversation over the horse. Jamie's making this face. He made this face the whole time, like this, like smirky face. And I was like, why don't you just like show him your butt? Like that's what's happening right now. Like you just like, why are they flirting so much? I mean, Knox is practically in love with him, and Jamie's like, yeah, you should be. I mean, it's just.
The fact that Knox also threw those people a coin, like, look, I got money. Look at what I just did for them.
It was super boring, but it was also I just thought Jamie looked so good. I was just into it.
Yeah. Really I mean, isn't that ridiculous that we will take any crumb? Yeah. Like as long as Jamie is riding a horse, although I don't think he was riding that horse very well. Like it was like super. I was like, can you not like do something to smooth this ride out? I mean, he was just jumping, and
it was flirty.
And it was just kind of really super flirty, and it didn't make a whole lot of sense for Knox to be this enamored with him. Again, he's not supposed to be super affluent, and so all of that was silly. And then when they ride into Hillsborough, and Knox says, it actually cracked me up. I laughed out loud. Knox says, "This is what a world without civility is like." And there's like a couple of wagons turned over and one broken lantern.
And there's a lady crying, like,
and like a lady barely like,
and the house was still
everybody's fine. No, there's no blood. Like there's a few burnt boards, but all of the buildings are standing. And I was like, what are you talking about? A world without civility.
The house the guy came out of, I was like, damn, that looks like a really cool looking home. Like I kind of like show that to a builder.
There was one broken window.
Yeah. One.
This is a world without civility. I mean, a harsh wind could have done that damage.
I was just watching Hunters on Prime, and one of the flashbacks takes you to the Warsaw Ghetto, and that's like they're not even comparable.
No, this was not a world without civility. It was just a world with an upturned wagon.
Yeah,
but I think that's why I liked the horror fight, because at least that felt like dirty, dangerous, like that's what that time could be.
Yes,
that part I kind of. That's why I think I felt a little Gangs in New York to me.
Yeah,
very much. So.
Anything that reminds me of Black Sails, and that kind of reminded me of Black Sails a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit more into. And like again, I didn't want to watch the tar and feathering, but I would have appreciated it more if it made sense and it didn't involve Myrta. But like. Or if they had earned it. They didn't earn it because they didn't give us the whole story of why they'd be this upset with the magistrates of Hillsborough in the first place. And then, of course, they're so enamored with their sets that they can't destroy them in any kind of real way. So there's like broken window, overturned cart that they're going to be able to flip right back over. I mean, it might as well Belle could have walked out singing about her books or whatever. That's how nice it still looks.
And also had it happened days before. They couldn't have just gotten there. And that woman walking down the street weeping. And I was just like, what is she even upset about?
And even the guy walks out, he just has one cut over his eyebrow.
But it's still bleeding. And that's where I'm just like,
happened the night before.
Jamie could have easily been like, I'll be right back. I think I know where they went. And just followed, I don't know, the tracks. Because that's my issue with this. But like you said, Amy, it was the grit of the horror fight. That's what we've been kind of waiting for.
Well, just like it felt like that world is dangerous. I need something that makes me feel like, you can, get cold cocked anywhere.
That's what I wanted that world to be like after the Regulators.
It needs to be more of that on a regular basis, because then when we see stuff like that, it does feel more gratuitous. The tar and feathering feels more gratuitous. The horror fight felt more gratuitous because there's beating each other for a long ass time.
The beating in the face I could have done without. Like, I get it.
I mean,
or just show it off screen, or
that's a lot of punching sounds for two women to make. I mean, why did the men have to meet in medias res of this, in the middle of this fight? Like, why couldn't we see the prelude to it or have something else going on? I mean, I realize that in the book, there's like an actual cockfight, and maybe that's difficult to do. Maybe they don't have the budget for CGI chickens and you can't really like let them roosters around killing each other. But like, my point is just that stuff feels harsher than it should, because we see a lot worse on Black Sails and Game of Thrones and other fantasy television, but everything else in the world is so pristine. Hillsborough was so still nice looking. You know, the ridge is so beautiful and everything is so nice. There's no dirt. Even Roger and Bree's cabin looks nicer, you know, than it should. And so when you see something that isn't nice, it has a more, you know, incongruous impact. And so that's why everybody's like, this is awful. It's not really. I don't care that these women were fighting, although I feel like it was a weird choice. But it just doesn't fit in the rest of the show. And they want it desperately to be a little bit more shocking and freaky than it is. Even the boobs and stuff in this show don't make a whole lot of sense. They used to, right? Like you see all like the nakedness in the France episodes or whatever, and it makes perfect sense. You know, all of the nakedness in season 1, perfect sense. And then like now, the sex montage last week, like we didn't need to see boobs. No. We didn't need, you know, like it doesn't make sense. The show is so wholesome. Right. Why would I need that?
Right. You know? And that's where it takes you out of the moment. It's the sense that everything's so clean and nice from even, I'm going to even be honest with you, Claire, when she's ripping up that body, there should have been blood all over those damn walls. There should have been blood on the floor. The candles, the dripping of the candles, even when they lifted them up, there should have been like wax dripping all over the ground or anything like that. So for us to go to this scene with these two women fighting, it really was a shock, because everything has been so clean and dainty from that time until that moment that you just kind of like, whoa. So, and then it's the fighting, and it goes on and on, and it's loud.
Yeah.
And you hear it.
Nadine just said it's like a poor imitation of Game of Thrones. And that's exactly, I mean, they're trying to do it, but it doesn't have the same impact because it's not the same world.
But even even in Game of Thrones, everyone had like a ring around the collar. You know,
exactly.
Knox's uniform is pristine, and that's like his only possession.
Yeah.
Right.
He has no money. He only has his, you know, money that he gets from being in service to the Queen, and he looks dry cleaned.
Yeah, and it makes, when you see men like Forbes or when you see Stephen Bonnet in his like dandy outfit, like they don't have the same impact as they would if you see Jamie like struggling as a poor homespun farmer. And Dawn just said, I wonder how much grit will be shown in the Beardsley cabin. I think we'll get a lot next week. I think that the Beardsley cabin is going to be really disgusting. And I think it's going to be a good episode because it's mostly Jamie and Claire. But I also think it'll be too bright, and it'll be a little bit too tied up with a pretty bow. I mean, I just think that there's going to be some stuff that's because the Beardsley scenes in the books are a lot. I mean, that when I think of the Beardsley cabin, it is dank and small and like a hoarder's, like the ultimate hoarder's nest. You know what I mean? Just like disgusting. And what I've seen so far feels a little bit too bright and airy, even in that context. So Vanessa just said, Matt said they wanted to push the envelope for what? Push for better writing. This is exactly the point. Like there's not, it doesn't matter if you turn a cockfight into a hooker fight. That's not exciting. That's not, you know, you're not pushing any envelope to see two women beating up on each other while a bunch of men, you know, parade around them and are excited about it. That is, there's nothing revolutionary about that.
And the whole point was it was as a point to emphasize the grit and the nastiness of Stephen Bonnet. We already know he's nasty. We already know he's a horrible character. We got that last season.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the transition between figuring out how Stephen Bonnet is going to work into this season. And, you know, in the book, he just kind of like pops up and you're like, oh, and then you get all this explanation of all the machinations that have been going on. So I'm glad to see them kind of like bring it in. And I get that he gets brought into it in a way that's shocking and violent. And that makes sense. And it happened last season where he's brought in a shocking and violent way.
Right.
I just don't think that the show earns that kind of visuals. It's just not that kind of show. At least it isn't right now. And it can be. And I think sometimes episodes really, really are. I mean, obviously there's gore and trauma and horrificness in the past for this show. Just lately, it's a little bit too sunny. It's a little bit too bright.
Right.
Yeah. So, it's like, what am I trying to think? Extremes. Everything's the extreme. It's either super violent or it's super clean. I do like the layer of menace that they brought in with Stephen Bonnet making the comment about like, oh, I'm a dad now. So is he going to really try to find, is this like another thing of stakes that they're offering us?
Not just trying to find Bree, but trying to get that child.
Yes.
And knowing him, like he's such an evil human being. What is he going to do with that child? So, and yes, Heidi, Ed is amazing. He is he is pure, like, for me, he's on par with Blackjack. He's that, because there's just something that just comes natural to him. It's not put out. He doesn't force it. It's just this natural evil that he exudes. And he's very good looking in real life.
Lachey said they mentioned him last week, so they had to show him this week. And his father line was a nice touch, though he raped Bree. You know, he's a piece of shit. I mean, 100%. They couldn't just mention him and then like let this episode kind of go without him. So I'm don't have a problem with Bonnet being in it. I don't have a problem with how he's introduced. The blinding the guy thing is not something I watched. But again, it's just because this show doesn't earn that kind of stuff, I don't think, right now.
Maybe they don't think that we as an audience can trust that him being a rapist is enough to make him terrible, that they have to make him a sadist. And
he has to continue to show, he has to hurt men. He has to
he's so evil. He doesn't care about anybody, not alone, not just women, it's anybody. But once again, for me, if you were to ask me what's the difference right now between Bonnet and Murtaugh in this episode, I couldn't tell you. You know, that was
there's not. This episode, there's no difference between their behaviors.
So in the between two fires,
when Murtaugh was so giggly when he kind of like fooled the guys in the dark, for remembering what the password was, it just felt a little menacing in a way that I don't think Murtaugh really is. I don't think Murtaugh's the kind of guy that gives a shit about taxes. I think he would just go somewhere else and make his own way.
I think he's a guy who'd give a shit about Jamie Fraser.
Yeah.
He's a guy who gave a shit about Jamie, in the first 2 seasons.
He's a completely different character than who he is in the book. I mean, he's not the curmudgeon. He's not like, there's a whole other aspect to him that they brought in. He's completely new. And that's probably why he's inconsistent, because they don't have a template to base him off of. He's based off of really nobody in the books at this point. And so what's the who are we looking to try to figure out what Murtaugh would do? It's not Murtaugh. So we're looking just to the writers to figure out what this character is going to do. That's why we just got what we just got.
Right.
So,
but Bonnet's evil. So there we go.
Well, I liked this episode a lot more before I started talking to you, Skanks.
That should just be our tagline. I like this. You'll like the episode a lot more before you start talking to us, Skanks. We're just that's the new Hangoutlander tagline. It's actually the number one problem.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure somebody on YouTube will put that. Like, you Skanks ruined this for me. Thank you.
100%. That's exactly what we'll get.
That's what we do at the pool table. We Skanks ruin things.
And look, I've said this before. I'll say it again. I've written it before. I fully understand what it's like to really like something, and then all of a sudden somebody on the internet tells you that it wasn't good, and you're like, shit, maybe I don't like it anymore. This episode is not bad. It's just, there's plenty of it. There's plenty of good stuff in it to like. Jamie getting off the horse like that, excellent. Unfortunately, he's wearing those terrible boots, so that ruined it.
The lighting was so good this week on his face, the chin dimple.
Right.
Enjoy what you can get. Enjoy the little things that you get.
Claire and Roger were good in this episode. Sophie Skeleton's acting was good in this episode.
It was.
Did you just call her Sophie Skeleton, or she did it on purpose?
She did.
I always call her that because that's what I think. That's why when we interviewed her, I was like, "Hi, Sophie." I didn't even call her last name.
Oh well, it's a good thing you didn't call her Sophie Skeleton. That would be very embarrassing.
Yeah.
Anywho, we'll have that interview up for you guys this week. So keep watching The Cool Table. Visit at thecooltable.com to read my recap. Like us on Twitter and Instagram. At Instagram, we are at the Cool Table. And follow us on YouTube so you'll get the notifications when we go live again. We will be live again next week.
Doolittle calls us the Skankinacks.
Oh gosh.
Skankinacks.
I am very primly dressed today, so I don't want to be called
that.
You
are. Look at you.
You are.
Thank you. Anyway, goodbye, guys. We will see you next week. Thank you for joining us, and be prepared for all the Beardsley nonsense next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.